Now that we know what to do with our card list component, we can actually take it a step further. So earlier, we were just passing children in and rendering it between our outside div. But we don't actually want to do that because right now, our app component is actually the one that is currently responsible for mapping over that list of monsters and then creating those elements. But we actually want to give that responsibility to the card list component because the card list component should be the one responsible for listing the cards. So let's actually move this into it. So first, what we're going to do is we actually don't need this anymore. This is completely unnecessary. We're going to pass in the monsters as a prop from our app component. And then we're going to move this into the card list. So we know that we don't need the children anymore. Instead, we're going to generate it ourselves. And it's not off state, it's off of the props. So if we do this, everything should stay the same, which it does, which is awesome because now our app doesn't have to worry about creating those monster cards, right? The card list component is the one that's responsible for it, which is great because that should be the responsibility of the card list component. But what the card list component is not going to be responsible for is deciding how this component will look. So yes, we could create our element and add those images all here, right? But then we don't want to do that because we actually want our card list component to not have to think about that. It should only think about what it should add, right? It should only think about rendering them. It shouldn't actually think about how to create them. So we're going to make a new component to do that. And that component is going to be a card component. So let's make a card folder in our components folder. And inside, let's make a new card.component.jsx. And we need to import React like we always do. And we're going to export this constant card, which is going to be a new functional component that will return a div. And inside, we're just going to make it the same thing that we had earlier, right? Now, this key actually is still going to go on our component. We're going to make sure to do that because we want React to still be aware that if any of these monsters update, I only want you to update that one element that gets affected, right? Now that we know that, what we want to do is we no longer have access to the monster in the scope. So what we got to do is we're going to pass that monster the same way we passed monsters into the props from our app.js, right? We passed monsters in. We're going to do the same thing, and we're going to pass an individual monster into our card component. So we're going to do props.monster here and make sure to add. Let's first import the card from card component. Oh, we actually don't need any of that. And then we got to pass a monster into our card component, right? So we're passing monster into the card component, and then the card component gets it from the props and displays the name. And if we check, it stays the same, which is awesome. That's exactly what we're looking for. Now, to add the styling, to make it look closer to our actual application. Just like before, I have the styles already written for you guys. We're just going to do the same thing that we did last time. We're going to make a new card.styles.css. And then we're going to use this card container class and the styling for it inside of our card. I forgot to import it, of course. Don't forget that we got to import those styles in to our file. Now we see this card has all of these stylings on it, right? Just like before. It just doesn't have the image anymore. But just like our final application, it's starting to look much closer. Now, where do we get the image? The image I actually get from this website called RoboHash. And from RoboHash, it's very easy to get unique images of these funky looking monsters just based on a changing number that you pass to the URL, which is really great for our purposes. So we are going to add a new image, right, with an alt text of monster. And we're going to do our source, which is RoboHash. Except instead of this number, we are going to add our props.monster.id because the ID is a unique number. And then this is what's called a URL parameter. So with this parameter, I'm essentially saying to use this set of images. And it's all on the website. You can see what other parameters you can add. But another great one we can add is size. So if we add an ampersand, we can say size equals, and I want to do 180 by 180. Now if we save and we look at our image, we see that it's there. We see we have these robo images and we have our names, and now we're looking really close to our final application. So let's just add the email as well. And instead of an H1, let's use an H2 and then a P, and let's just do props.monster.email. And now when we look, we see it looks exactly like what we have in our application. Awesome. So now in the next section, what I'm going to add is the actual search bar. And we're going to see how we can filter out and add more functionality to our components.